Not sure what ZapWorks Studio is and how it relates to AR development? Well, you'll know after this episode, so let's get to it. You are listening to the How to Create VR podcast, weekly conversations with VR and AR professional creators, designers, and producers. Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to Create VR podcast, where I speak with professional creators, designers, developers, and producers who work on VR, AR, and MR projects. I'm Marcelo, a VR and AR developer, evangelist, and the guy behind howtocreatevr.com. My guest today is Chris Holton, product manager of ZapWorks content creation tools. Today, we'll find out what ZapWorks is and how we can use it to create AR experiences. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I found out about you guys. I took a seminar in the Realities 360 conference a couple of weeks ago, and I took this short seminar on creating AR experiences quickly, and I was really impressed by it. So I downloaded the app, the Studio, which we're going to talk about. And I thought, I got to have these guys on to talk a little bit more about this, because I think a lot of people that want to do AR development, I think it's a great way to get into it. But before we jump into this whole thing, why don't you give us a bit about your background?
Okay, yeah, great. So as you said, my name's Chris and I'm the product manager here at Zappar, working on ZapWorks. My background is startup. So we're based in London. So I've worked for kind of 2 or 3 different London-based startups in a kind of combination of growth and product roles. One of the reasons why I ended up working at Zappar was because a previous company that I worked for had a big focus on user experience. So part of the mission of Zappar was to grow this kind of content creation side of the business. And they wanted me to come in just because I had that background in SaaS and user experience. So they wanted to kind of see how we could, take it from there.
Is that how you got into AR? Or have you been in AR before that?
Yeah, so I was aware of AR before joining Zappar, but, obviously have a lot deeper knowledge now. But yeah, I think the summer before I joined, so I joined about 2 years ago now, it was the summer when Pokemon Go blew up. So that kind of took it onto the mainstream radar. But yeah, Zappar is the first kind of company that I've worked for that's been AR focused.
So I'm sure you've tried a lot of AR experiences. Being in charge of that product, you've got to see what people are making out there. Do you have a particular experience you like? And can you talk a little bit about why you like it? What makes it special?
Yeah, of course. Some of the kind of nicest experiences that I've seen created is when you kind of have a portal into different worlds. So we ran a really cool user competition. I think it was at the start of the year, where we kind of challenged some of the kind of ZapWorks Studio developers to use masking to kind of create a portal into a different world. And users got kind of really creative with that. One really nice one was someone created a kind of submarine environment, and you kind of put the target image up on the wall, and you were kind of placed in a submarine and had to kind of collect all these different objects. So that was a really nice one made by a ZapWorks Studio user.
So let's talk a little bit about creating AR apps, and how different are they from VR? In other words, the creation, right? What are some of the considerations that people that maybe are creating VR but want to start doing AR should consider?
They're similar in that they're using the kind of same components. You're thinking about things like 3D models, how to kind of fill a space and how it interacts. And I'm sure your audience know that kind of VR is fully immersed, and then AR is just that extra layer of digital content on the real world, whether that is tracked to a target image or whether it's using something like SLAM. AR is just that kind of enhancement of the real world with digital content.
Can you pinpoint any specific things that somebody coming from VR should be aware of when creating AR? Or what are some of the basic things that an AR developer should know?
There's kind of a few fundamentals to AR. One is obviously the tracking canvas. So are you going to be using a target image, which ZapWorks specializes in? So the majority of ZapWorks experiences will be using target images. Are you going to be using, the user's face in a kind of face filter as your target? Or are you going to be using something like visual inertial odometry, where you're kind of using the real world and real surfaces? So that's your kind of level one, what you're going to track on. And then you've got to think about content. So, because we're dealing with the real world, a lot of the objects that you're going to be using is 3D. So you have to have that kind of at least baseline knowledge of 3D models and how they work and how they move, and especially if you're dealing with characters, the bones and the animations and all that great stuff that kind of was developed through things like game development and stuff over the last kind of 20 years. And the third part that I'm really focused on trying to communicate to our users and get them think about is that kind of narrative and story element of the AR experience. So, why are you doing it? But also, anyone that's produced or worked on films or short stories or kind of advertisements will know, you have to get the users emotionally involved in what you're trying to tell them. And it's no good just placing a 3D model in the real world with no context, no call to action. You kind of have to think about these fundamentals as well. So yeah, that kind of user experience play is also really important to being successful.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Zappar. Explain, am I pronouncing it right, by the way? Zappar, right?
Yeah, Zappar.
All right. You know us Americans, how we pronounce stuff, so.
Yeah. I hope your audience can understand me.
Oh, totally. We'll do like Netflix. We'll just put subtitles so we can understand the British films. So anyway, tell us about Zappar. Tell us exactly what is it? How does it work? I know you guys have like multiple versions of doing things within Zappar, so maybe you can explain what it is and what those versions are.
So Zappar is essentially an AR company, and we have kind of dabbled in VR and MR, but our background is in augmented reality. That's where we kind of grew up from. We have kind of two business models that run parallel. One is the kind of creative studio where we partner with some of the kind of biggest brands in the world, Shazam, 7-Eleven, some of the NFL teams. We've done some really great content made in our kind of in-house studio for big brands like that. But we also decided that we needed a tool that was completely customized. So we had a look at some of the other tools out there and decided to build one on our own. And that's kind of where ZapWorks was born, really. So ZapWorks is our self-service AR content creation tool, and users can use it to kind of build their own AR, VR, and MR experiences. And it's actually the tool that we were using internally and then released publicly.
That's interesting. So you actually created it for yourselves to be able to run the creative side, but then released it to the public. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think it was always the plan to do it that way, but it's been nice to kind of get the tools that we were using ourselves and kind of, as we kind of enhance them internally, to kind of release them to the users as well and make sure everyone else can use them, because there's demand for these types of tools.
Well, explain a little bit how that workflow works. You've got the widgets, the designer, ZapWorks Studio, and then you also have the Zappar app for the mobile phone. So can you explain how all of that works? What's the workflow like, and what do developers do, and how do users use them?
Most of your audience are developers, so most of you would probably go towards something like ZapWorks Studio, which allows you to build in 3D models. It's kind of got animations. You can use JavaScript in order to kind of code your interactions. So you can almost use it like a game engine. It's got, gyroscopes, so you can use things like 360 images and videos. So that's our kind of main tool that the developers will pick up, the developer and kind of designer community. And then we have the other tools that you mentioned. We've got designer and we've got widgets, and they're kind of more introductory tools to kind of get people into augmented reality and get them experiencing, this great technology for the first time. So they're a lot easier to use, but the capabilities and the feature set isn't quite as strong as for Studio. So it kind of is up to the user to determine which one is going to be best for them. So
it's more focused on like power users or entry-level users versus full-blown developers.
Yeah. So for instance, designer, we kind of sometimes internally refer to as the kind of PowerPoint for AR. That's the kind of level that one's pitched at. And then, Studio is comparable to any of the major AR content creation platforms out there.
So once a developer creates an application, whether using the widget or the designer or the studio, how is it consumed?
The workflow is that you would create your experience and you would track your experience to what we call a target image. And then the user would download from their app store on the iOS or Android app stores the free Zappar app. And once they see that kind of call to action, that marker, they'll know this is AR enabled, this piece of content, and I'm going to scan it with the free app, and obviously then just, enjoy the content.
So what about incorporating, let's say a company already has a mobile AR app and they don't want to have they want to use your studio to build AR apps, but they don't want to have their users download another mobile app to scan this. Can they incorporate it into their own mobile app or even create a custom app that has nothing to do with Zappar from the perspective of branding, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. People sometimes say, what if I don't want to use the Zappar app or I'm advertising you? And well, we're kind of, as a business, we're pretty agnostic whether you use our app or you embed our SDK in your own app. So there's a kind of annual licensing fee to do that, but you can embed our scanning technology into any iOS or Android app. Zappar is the AR partner of Shazam. So you may have seen that Shazam has, done some great stuff with AR in the past kind of 12 months. And that is powered by ZapWorks and Zappar technology. So that's probably the biggest one with the widest reach. But as I mentioned earlier, if a big business wants to kind of protect that brand, then we can do all kinds of great additions for them, like giving them the kind of technology to embed it in their own app, or we can build an app for them. And we can also kind of customize the codes as well, just to make them, feel completely branded.
Almost like white labeling.
Exactly it is.
To view an AR experience, you're scanning the Zap code, basically, which is an image that has like dashes around in a circle, and then it recognizes your app. And, a lot of people may ask you, I'm sure they've asked you, what's the difference between that and then scanning like a QR code?
Fundamentally, the concepts are very similar. So it's quite a common question. QR codes, people will be very familiar with them, generally just take you to a website. So you see a piece of print, you scan it, and you go to the website and maybe you book a ticket or whatever you're trying to get the user to do. The Zap code is tied to the content and the image, so it allows you to kind of use it as a canvas to layer that AR there, rather than taking you off to a kind of mobile website. And you can start to play around with the 3D models and the gyroscopes and all that great stuff.
So if you're incorporating it into your own mobile app, right, you still need to scan a code. You can't make it where it just runs automatically, because basically scanning the code is going to your service and saying, okay, give me the app for this code, basically. It's just a way. It's almost like a file open to kind of simplify it, right?
Yes. So we embraced codes, 5 or 6 years ago as a business. There's a lot of AR that kind of looks at the kind of image recognition on its own. But one of the things with that is it becomes not very scalable if when you think about the fundamentals of different, marketing campaigns or advertising campaigns. So for instance, if you were doing a movie poster campaign in France and the UK, if the user scanned an image in the UK, there would be a risk that scanning technology would see that as the same image, but the French version. And all of a sudden the French version would be pulled up in the UK, which is a kind of not ideal user experience. So what the code does is it means that the AR experience is a lot more reliable and it's a lot more scalable. It just kind of supports the whole ecosystem and just is a lot better for businesses.
It's basically a pointer to the app. It recognizes that and goes to your app. And your Zap codes are these dashes that are in a circular kind of design, and then obviously you can put your little image wherever you want that. Any capabilities of being able to customize that image, meaning that instead of having it, a circle, you want to do something where you hide it more within the image so it doesn't stand out as much, but it still recognizes it?
Yes. So anyone that is looking to use, Zap codes and customize them, there are kind of guidelines for how to do so. I've seen some great examples done by our design team, how they've incorporated that Zap code naturally into the kind of integrity of the piece of print design. So I definitely recommend you check them out. It is fairly flexible. It's probably best visualized with examples. So I'm happy to send a few of those.
But you're able to hide it, which is the key, right? So that way it kind of hides within that experience and you're not throwing off like, oh, this is what it looks like. And all of a sudden you see this big blob there that you have to scan. You can hide it. Design-wise, you can hide it.
Design-wise, you can hide it, but we tend to advise people to a certain extent embrace the code. If you try and make it too small, what you end up happening is the call to action just isn't there. So you spend all this money developing this great AR experience, and then no one knows that they're meant to scan it with an app. So the one of the great things about the Zap code is it acts as a kind of natural call to action. And for instance, if you're doing, a magazine or a brochure, what you can do is say on, intro page or front cover, this is AR enabled. Everywhere you see a Zap code, you'll know there's something to be unlocked and there's some additional bonus content for you to enjoy. So it kind of acts as that natural call to action. So if you try and hide it too much, then you risk people not actually scanning the content, which is actually the objective.
So do you currently support, because we were talking a lot about mobile apps, so people consuming AR through mobile apps. What about people consuming AR through like HMDs and glasses? Do you currently support that or will you in the future?
It's a great question. Part of our mission as a company, we always envisage ourselves moving towards this great hardware technology like glasses and contact lenses, and we definitely want to be a part of that world when it occurs. But at the moment, we love mobile. We think mobile is great. The mobile phone is the modern day extension of the human being. So we think mobile is great. We've done little bits exploring with Zapbox, which your users may have been familiar with, which is our kind of MR product. And we did a really great Kickstarter campaign in the autumn of 2016, where we kind of crowdfunded to kind of test the developer community's demand. And it was this idea of a HoloLens is about $3,000 or it was at the time. And we kind of challenged ourselves, can we get a product out there that's not in the same functionality and technical levels and that kind of stuff, but can we get a version out there that is a 1/100th of the price? And we kind of retailed that for $30, the Zapbox kit, and it's just been fantastic.
It's interesting because I saw a video on this, and basically to clarify to the listeners, Zapbox is basically, it's a box you wear on your head, right? That you put your phone in, but it also comes with markers that you hold in your hand. So in essence, you now have like touch controllers that you can use, right? So you almost have not full 6 degrees of freedom, but you kind of have more functionality there.
Yeah, so it's essentially our kind of modified Google Cardboard, and it uses a wide-angle lens as well, just to kind of broaden the field of view. And the point codes are kind of placed on a table, on the floor, and you start to create this map in the real world. And you can build your own AR experiences, MR experiences in kind of almost that room scale. And the final point that you spoke to, if you're using the head-mounted display and you need the ability to interact, so the controllers give you, that freedom back.
It's an interesting concept. I saw the video there. People can go on the website and check it out more. But let's circle back to ZapWorks Studio. With Studio itself, because that's where most of the listeners here will end up using, can you integrate into like Google Poly, either directly or import an object from it somehow? What other kinds of 3D assets can you import? And also, do you guys offer a 3D asset store that people can just get stuff for free or for paid?
Again, great question. So ZapWorks Studio supports a few different 3D file formats that your kind of audience will be familiar with. FBX and OBJ are two main ones. We also worked with a file format called Pod, which is kind of optimized for mobile. So we kind of use that as well. But if you want to be bringing in animated 3D models, then obviously you'll want to choose the FBX. On your question of where to get models, we do have a growing library of 3D models that we give away on our kind of documentation site. So I encourage you to go there and check that out. That's a great resource. But obviously, if there's dozens of great 3D model libraries and marketplaces online. So yeah, I definitely importing the models shouldn't be too much of a struggle.
And you can create primitives, right? And lights all within Studio?
Yeah, so the primitives we don't do at the moment. It probably could happen, but we have a selection of them on our 3D model library, so you can go and check those out.
Got it. So currently, to do any kind of primitive stuff, you basically bring in models, basically. You're basically working with models right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, once you get your models into Studio and you want to start animating them, what are the ways that we can actually animate them? Can you go through scripting? Do you have a visual tool to be able to animate? Is there a timeline?
You would bake all your animations into the model using your 3D modeling software, whether that's kind of Maya or Blender or Max. And then Studio is really great for animations. So we have this concept of controllers and states. So you can kind of create these different versions or different positions of your models or your different assets, your media files. And then you can also use timelines as well to have that increased flexibility. And then it's a case of, either coding those timelines to play at certain interactions. So if someone presses a button, you might get a timeline to play. And obviously it's a JavaScript-based tool. So you have the kind of full JavaScript library to kind of play around with as well.
I see. So you have both a visual way of doing it through these controllers, which kind of maybe equates with like Blueprint with Unreal or the State Machine in Amazon Sumerian, and then you're able to go deeper and do scripting with JavaScript for animation.
That's not quite right. Perhaps I explained that a little bit wrong there. You use a combination of the controller states and timelines with JavaScript to kind of play them.
Got it. So you combine both of them to do that animation.
Yeah, and then the kind of version that we have of Blueprint, and we think that's a really nice way of doing it. We actually, in June last month, released a kind of major update to Studio, which we called Studio 5. And a big kind of piece of new functionality of that was what we're calling actions. So users are able to play functionality and play functions off different events, such as, pressing a plane or a media file finishing. And they're able to play those timelines and states without ever opening up a script node. So it does have some limitations, but for just kind of bringing down the learning curve and people that aren't comfortable with JavaScript, it just makes ZapWorks Studio that bit more accessible.
It's sort of a way to get started, and if you want to go deeper or customize it more, then you would jump in and do your own scripting within that controller. Exactly,
yeah.
So let's talk about anchors. Anchors are locations that you can place objects, and then if you move your device away and then come back, it's still in that same location where you placed it, right? Do you guys support anchors? And then also, do you support cloud anchors for multiple users to be in the same experience?
Yes. So the multi-user stuff is obviously amazing. We've all seen the demos, and we have our own roadmap towards that, which hopefully we can kind of reveal some stuff, probably going to be in the new year now, by the time we start to kind of talk about our own multi-user stuff. Cloud anchors, again, it's not something we have at the moment, but, it's great technology.
And it's fairly new with Google as well, right? I think they just recently released that as well, so.
Yeah, I saw the announcements and stuff, but I think, it's great. It's great technology, but it's going to be a little while off before we get that.
But it's definitely the way of the future, right? Because if you want to have multiple people in that experience, I think it's a great way to do it.
Yeah, that's where we want to get to, right? That's as a kind of, AR and VR enthusiast yourself, we all want to get to this position, but obviously
one step at a time.
Yeah, there's trade-offs and stuff like that. So you need to kind of choose your own direction.
So for developers that maybe have some bugs, never me, but for those that do write stuff with bugs, I was kidding about that. All I write is bug stuff. Do you offer any kind of debugging tools within Studio itself? And also, do you offer versioning or some sort of points where you can back up?
Yes, it's a great question. So ZapWorks Studio is a kind of downloadable piece of software. And part of that package is your kind of debugging tools. So, your users will kind of see that and recognize that and definitely use it. If you are going to play around with Studio, I do encourage you guys to use that. Sorry, Marcelo, what was the second part of your question there?
Versioning, if you have the ability to version projects.
It's something on the roadmap. We think it's coming, but I can't give you an exact release date, but it is something that's requested, something we want to do.
What about interactions? How can we interact with the AR app? I'll give you some examples. Can we use like voice commands, tapping, pinching? What are some of the things that ZapWorks allows us to do with our app?
It's mainly those kind of normal mobile interactions. So, tapping and pinching and swiping. You can kind of code all those interactions into your experiences. The voice stuff, again, we'd love to look at that, but it's not something that we support right now.
And, I'm sure, because this is ever evolving, but there's tons of AR features that, applications have to slowly put them in. But there's other features like light estimation, multi-plane scanning, interacting with virtual objects, or virtual objects interacting with real-world objects, right? Even location-based AR. Do you guys support any of that, or do you have anything of that in the timeline that you're going to do?
Yeah, so in our last release, we just introduced dynamic lighting. So that's going to go a long way in helping users, really push those 3D models and make them look super realistic and, lifelike and really look great. The ones you mentioned, location is something that we are interested in. Again, I can't reveal too much on where we are, but it's something that we're looking at. We'd love to do that and get that in users' hands as well, because we think that's really cool.
So finally, what about AR Core and AR Kit? How does this fit within ZapWorks Studio? Is this something that people can access outside of or integrate with? Or is ZapWorks Studio using AR Core and AR Kit to create these experiences? Can you explain the relationship between Studio and these SDKs?
So, up until this point, most of ZapWorks experiences have been based around the concept of the target image. But obviously, Apple and Google have released these great technologies, and we are looking to leverage them within Studio. What we want is for people to, encourage users to be building for AR Kit and AR Core within Studio. We are kind of actively working on that, and that is in the roadmap. And we hope to have some announcements on that in the coming months. But that is certainly something that we want to do.
So obviously the success of your company it's twofold, right? One is developers develop a lot of apps, and then people recognize and start using the Zappar app to scan these things. So are you guys looking into, and if you can't answer this, that's okay, because it may be totally secret, but are you guys looking into somehow incorporating your app natively into phones, and not even the phones, natively into OSs like Android? So that way, kind of like, like the camera app is built in already, the Zappar app will be built in already. So then people automatically can recognize that. Is that something that's in the future that you can even speak to?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great idea. We're obviously, Shazam is on hundreds of millions of devices around the world. And Zappar is the kind of tool that powers the AR in Shazam's app. So that's probably the closest that we've got to that. I think, that kind of strategic partnership is something that, we're always looking at. But, at the moment, nothing to announce on that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's more like using the SDK to incorporate it within a massive amount of apps versus just having your app everywhere natively. Okay. That makes sense. Cool. Well, Chris, completely out of time here. I really appreciate your time being on the podcast and sharing all this information.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, if people want to get hold of you or they want to learn more about Zappar, do you want to give out some URLs, emails, whatever you like?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is zap.works, and that's where you can go and get yourself a 30-day business trial of Zappar and ZapWorks Studio. Or if you're a kind of hobbyist, then feel free to set up a personal account. We run regular competitions. So if you are someone that wants to be building AR, then please do kind of look out for those. We just finished one, but we'll be announcing another one soon. And then obviously we're on social media as well, so Twitter and Instagram as @Zappar app. So check us out there. If you want to connect with me, if you want to, talk about AR or, discuss a project, then you can find me. I'm Chris Holton. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, download Studio, and have a good time.
Well, thanks again, Chris. And to the rest of you, I'm glad you were here with me. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and like us on iTunes or SoundCloud. For more episodes, check out howtocreatevr.com/iTunes or howtocreatevr.com/SoundCloud. If you'd like to watch video interviews and how-to tutorials all about VR and AR, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at howtocreatevr.com/YouTube. If you are ever in the Southern California area, we have a monthly meetup with lots of great VR and AR presentations. You can join or RSVP for our next meetup at howtocreatevr.com/meetup. Finally, if you are interested in learning more about how to create VR, AR, and MR experiences, please visit howtocreatevr.com. So until the next episode, I'm your host, Marcelo Lewin. Cheers, everyone.